welcome to another episode of the Sales Syndicate podcast, episode 42, I believe. Now we're going to be covering mastering account penetration today, so how to break into your target accounts. Before we sort of jump into the main body of the discussion, I will hand over to my guest, Troy, to introduce himself and the company, and then we will loop back around to mastering account penetration. So over to you, Troy.
Awesome. Yeah, Jamie, thanks so much for having me. My name is Troy Munson. I'm a large enterprise account executive here at Proofpoint. I've actually only been here for about 6 months now, but I've made some really good progress. So while we go through this entire conversation, I'll chat with both kind of what I'm doing today and then what I was doing at my previous job, because they're two completely different type of account penetration styles. But like I said, thanks for having me and happy to be here.
And do you want to just give us a bit of background of the company as well, just in terms of, what the product is? Of course, if anyone wants to go and check them out, then at least they've got a bit of a understanding.
Absolutely. So Proofpoint is a cybersecurity company. I wish I could tell you the exact solution, but because we're a very large company, we have about 30 different products, so I won't dive into it too much. But essentially, we prioritize email. That's our big thing, is protecting email. And then another thing you'll hear me talk about throughout the company is metadata, which is a company that helps automate ads for B2B marketers. Just because, again, I'm going to jump back and forth between, what's different from where I'm at today to where I was previously.
Yeah, no, I've as a marketer, I've heard of metadata. I follow them on LinkedIn. I look at a lot of their stuff. They've just released a recent report, which is quite interesting about LinkedIn ads and things. But that's that's another topic altogether. But as I said at the start, we're going to be talking about account penetration, and I think we usually do kickoff calls before these podcasts, and I basically hand it over to the guest and I say, what do you want to talk about? And I think this was one of the first things that you sort of listed as being something that you could talk about passionately or share a good amount of like history and success stories and tips and tricks. So when we're talking about account penetration, do you want to just give us like a layman's term definition of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so what I'm talking about is really how to book that first meeting with an account. But less about any account. At the end of the day, you want to go after the right accounts, and you want to make sure that the meeting is with your ICP and somebody who is ready to buy. So in layman's term, it's the steps and processes that I do and all the actions that I do that actually gets me a meeting at an account that I'm looking to possibly sell to or provide value to.
Brilliant. And we've to make it nice and easy to break down, and for YouTube timestamps and things, we've broken it into 5 sort of key parts, which sort of follow the logical process you might go through as part of your pipeline or your outreach. So the first part of that, naturally, is going to be research. So I don't know how far up the research or down the research funnel you want to start with in terms of, have we already set our ICP or haven't we? Whereabouts do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'd like to start like we do know who we are targeting. Cool. Because then it would be a whole hour on research if we did not know who we were targeting. So yeah, we'll do like we know our ICP and we know who we're selling to. Cool.
All right, ICP's in the book. It's on a wall. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it like the back of their hand. So let's you've got, I don't know, you've moved into a new role. There's an ICP set. In this is in your experience. Where do you start? How are you starting?
Yeah, so in my new role, I have less than 10 accounts that I can even break into. So that makes it a lot different than having the hundreds that I did when I was at Metadata. So in my new role, the very first thing that I did, aside from all the training and onboarding and stuff like that, of course, it was Salesforce is usually the first place that I always look. So these accounts, what was going on in the past? What's closed lost? What did they possibly have that they did not renew? All of that good stuff. However, Salesforce data, as you know, is not always accurate and it's not always fun to work with. But that's the first thing that I do, especially if you see something in 2018, it might not be worth saying, hey, is it open to reconnecting again? But if you see some stuff in the last 6 to 12 months, I take that information and essentially I put it all in a spreadsheet, which is why I should probably chat with you guys about about account research, but I put it all in a spreadsheet. And so I have my spreadsheet with my 9 accounts broken out into tabs. Each account gets their own tab, and in those tabs, there's every person at that company that I'd reach out to. So I will do research in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'll do a pretty specific ICP search, so very specific with the keywords and job titles that I go after. What I do there, I have them all saved in a list in LinkedIn Sales Nav, but I take a lot of notes on these people. And so once I have these people, all of these accounts, I do a lot of research on Google and LinkedIn, but I'll type, like, for example, I'll type in Jamie P and then I'll do podcast, or how do you pronounce your last name? Pagan?
Pagan, yeah. Yeah,
cool.
like the religion.
Yep. So I'll do Jamie P Pagan, and I'll type in article, blog, podcast, each word by themselves. And then I'll realize all these podcasts that you've done. So then what I'll do is in that LinkedIn spreadsheet or that Excel spreadsheet, right next to their name, I have a tab that says, or a column that says prospecting information, and it's every single thing that I could find about them online. Kind of weird and stalky-ish if you want to think of it that way, but this is what's actually helped me break into the most accounts, is knowing every single thing that they care about, and because you're really only going to do something if you care about it. And like we were talking about in the beginning, and that you're good at. So I do that, and then I do a lot of account research, which comes down to, at my current company, it comes down to looking at their annual report, because most of them are public companies. But then it comes down to, I'm looking at job boards. So I want to know if they're hiring in any sort of similar role to who I'm reaching out to. But I dive deep into that, which I've been thinking for a while. There should be like a chat GPT thing where you can just let it go surf it, and it gives you everything that they're looking to do in their company. So maybe I'll do this. But what I do today is I'll go to those jobs that are open, and then I'll look at their tech stack, and I'll look at what they want that person to do, because that gives you an idea of what their strategy is moving forward. So if it's something like, we just need you to respond to bugs, okay, cool. But if it's something like explore new ways to, increase our vulnerability, whatever it might be, now you know that they're probably hunting for solutions, because this person's coming in to improve the efficacy of what they're doing today. So I write down a lot of information on that in an Excel spreadsheet. Again, very specific titles, though. I don't care what they're doing in marketing or sales if I'm selling to supply chain. And I'm not selling to supply chain, but that's just an example. But so there's that on the research. And then I use all of that research to start crafting less, hey, here's what my product does emails, and more, here's what your business does emails, and here's where it should go and where it can be if you've done this, right? So that's where I kind of start with all of my research. I don't want to talk for too long because you might have some questions there, but first Salesforce, then LinkedIn Sales Nav, and then I transfer that all over to a sheet and pretty much aggregate all the information that I find across LinkedIn and Google.
Yeah, so it's a very consultative approach, which is definitely, I mean, a lot of stuff you're seeing online nowadays is basically saying that consultative is king in terms of, you don't want to spray and pray. Like, you called it stalkerish, but I think it's just that effective mapping, isn't it, of the account and of the opportunity. And are there any, just like off the top of your head, are there any like highlight golden nuggets that you look for as well? Like you've had great success with certain bits of information, so if you find that, you're like, bingo, that's my hook.
If they've had any sort of podcast feature or anything like that, I feel as if that's been the golden nugget and has probably the highest conversion rate when it comes to booked meetings, because they're sharing their thoughts, and people love when you validate their ideas and validate their thoughts. So that's one. If I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I was listening to episode 42 with Troy Munson and you said this, love that way of thinking, but blah, 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 you're hooked, right? So it's something more like that rather than, hey, you want to buy this tool. So podcast features have been like the biggest golden nugget and the highest conversion rate, but also any sort of, like, for example, this one executive wrote almost like a research study that I read. It was 22 pages. It was really long, but I read about 3/4 of it, but at the end of at the end of reading it, I knew essentially everything that he cared about and what he was doing. Immediate meeting. I made a video of me pretty much summarizing it and things that he cared about, and within an hour, he responded saying, "Let's book some time." So any sort of research / article that they've written, and then definitely podcast feature. Like nothing's better than their own words, using their own words to book a meeting.
Yeah, it's interesting the podcast one because we've seen a big success ourselves, but also some of our clients that they use podcasts slightly differently in that they'll use the podcast to get guest speakers on, but those guest speakers actually sit in their target accounts.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is get them on the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, it's still relevant to their ICP. They come on the podcast, they get them to share their expertise, and then within sort of 3 to 6 months, there's typically this long tail of like, okay, you've built that initial relationship. You're now connected on LinkedIn. You've sent them clips and you're going back and forth and stuff. And then it tends to be a nice introduction of like, look, we had you on the podcast, or we had one of your colleagues on the podcast. It'd be great to have a chat about the wider strategy, because the conversation we had on the podcast was really, really interesting, and we think there could be something there. And that's been really, really good. So I can definitely believe the podcast golden nugget for sure.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I feel like y'all do really good at that. And Winter with Peep Laha, I think that he does really good at that, getting people that he knows at the end of the day could possibly be a customer on his podcast too. Yeah, that's a really interesting tactic, and I love it because it's like the best way to break into an account if you are a podcast host or something like that.
Yeah, and you're getting free SME tips and tricks from them as well, which is great. So it's win-win. And you mentioned Winter and Peep Laha or Laja, I don't know how you say it. If you work in marketing, that sort of area, definitely go and check that out, because that's a very, very good podcast or a very, very, very good page to follow on LinkedIn. His personal page for website teardowns in terms of messaging and stuff. That's really, really good. But anyway, back to the sales topic.
We weren't paid for that.
Okay, so we've I should have got some commission off the back of that kickback. Rev share incoming. I think it's right. So that's your research. You've created this spreadsheet or Google Sheets with tabs for each of your target accounts, and you said you've only got 9 or 10, so it's easier to manage at that sort of size. You've got a column for anything that could be of reference or of interest for you to be able to make that introduction and refer to and use as part of your consultative approach. Now, part 2 that we've got is contact mapping. So you've found some people, you've had a look at the account, you've done loads of research, and then next thing is to map out the company in terms of like hierarchy and structure. So do you want to just run us through how you go about that currently?
Yeah, so very similar. When I get them on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, when I transfer them over to my Excel spreadsheet, I put a upper level executive, VP, director, entry level on that spreadsheet. And again, each of these people have their own little tidbits about that research that I had just previously done. And then also, I'm sure we'll get into it, but each message and each value proposition that I am, reaching out to them with, it's different, right? Why would you email a specialist the same thing that you would email or a CEO? Like, you just wouldn't. But that's what I do. And I do that for each account. Just tear it out. These are the people I want to get in touch with really bad. And these are the people that are hands-on in the product that probably have a different set of, things that might be valuable to them.
Do you have like a minimum, like viable number of contacts that you go for? Because is it that you just find one person in each area, or are you looking to multi-thread the hell out of it and go for like 10, 15?
Yeah, great question. So now I have 9 accounts, but these accounts are 20, 30, 50, 200,000 employees. Like I don't have any accounts less than 10,000 employees right now. So of course I'm going to have about 20 to 30 different people, and I'm multi-threading the hell out of it. I'm going, these people are getting this message today. This guy's getting this message today. This woman's getting this. Like, they're all getting different messages, so they can't send it around internally and be like, look at this spam. That's one. But when I was at Metadata, when we sold to a lot of like fast growing startups, and there really was only 1 or 2 people, it's just those 1 or 2 people. So I think it's good to clarify. It depends on how big your accounts are. So yeah, it depends. In Metadata, 1 or 2 people. Sometimes I'd go, so it was marketing focused. Sometimes I'd go after the account executives, because the whole idea behind Metadata was to build more pipeline, and they care about pipeline. But I did that a lot for deal movement when deals are going stale and stuff, and I wanted them to tell me that they're getting bad leads. I would use that for like more deal progression. But today, multi-thread, every single account that I have.
And if you were going to, put a stake in the ground and say a number for those, like you said, 1 to 2 for the startups, for the types of businesses you're targeting now, would you be happy at like a sweet spot of 10? What is it? 10, 15?
Yeah. I'd say 5 to 10. 5 to 10 of like, these people really care. The other ones you might be able to get some, high level information about the company from, which is great. I would probably do that over on LinkedIn more than I would like try to reach out to them via email. I'd maybe just connect with a little bit lower level people or people that somewhat touch the solution. And that would all be kind of like just to extract information. But yeah, if I'm going after a small business, startups or mid-market or anything like that, or even smaller enterprise, 5, 10, 15 max maybe. But yeah, once you get up a little bit bigger accounts, it's just, there's so many people. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think enterprise deals take long enough, don't they? Sales cycles probably 6 to 9 months on average, probably minimum actually.
If you're lucky.
So if there's definitely a case of too many cooks spoil the broth. So I think let's go with that 5 to 10. I think that sounds like a manageable number. I guess when you get into the 15 to 20 to 25, that's like a classroom full of kids, isn't it? That's almost too many.
Yeah, it is. And if you have 100 accounts, that's 2,500 contacts that you now have to reach out to.
Yeah. That starts to get a bit unmanageable, doesn't it?
Yeah, that becomes just throwing marketing campaigns, like just do that kind of stuff. But but yeah, it does become unmanageable if you have an Excel sheet of 2,500 people. Yeah.
Okay, so we've done the research, we've done the content mapping, we've got loads of information. We've got the 10 to 15 or 5 to 10 ideal fit prospects. Now, in terms of like the multi-channel approach to how you're actually aiming to reach out to them, what channels do you use and why?
LinkedIn, email, cold call. And why is a great question. I was actually just on a LinkedIn live right before this talking about it. So LinkedIn, again, 2 different plays. At Metadata, marketers and sales or account executives are extremely active on LinkedIn. I sell to cybersecurity folks. They're 50, 60 years old. They've been at the same company for 30 years. They don't care about touching LinkedIn. 2 completely different styles here. However, I found success with both. If I'm targeting marketers or any go-to-market, right? RevOps, sales ops, whatever it might be, any go-to-market title, I'm going heavy on LinkedIn, lots of connections, and I'm doing lots of gives. So I'm giving a lot of information, giving a lot of valuable tips by posting or just in their DMs, instead of just saying, hey, Jamie, you want to meet up and check out this product? It's like, hey, Jamie, listen to your podcast and you mentioned like struggling with this, this might be helpful for you. And it might not even be related to my product, but you might find value in it. And now you know my face, my name. So I do that on LinkedIn. And now at my new company where I'm targeting people that are not as active on LinkedIn, what I've noticed is the entry-level people are very active on LinkedIn, but the executives are not. They're the ones that have been there for 30 years. And those entry-level people, they are very willing to just talk about what they're doing in their day-to-day. So I leverage that to get a lot of information, what tools they're using, what they're working on.
Yeah, they're not quite as savvy as the 30-year veterans in keeping themselves to themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I'm targeting cybersecurity where people don't want to tell you what's going on, right? And so there's that. With email, I do lots of, actually, I got it right here. I do lots of whiteboarding stuff. Used to do a lot of videos when I was at used to do a lot of videos when I was at a place called Dremio. When I went to Metadata, I would actually just use my photo booth and take a picture with the whiteboard, and that was much more scalable than creating a 1-minute video every single time. That was my highest conversion rate into penetrating accounts, was a whiteboard picture, a really brief message. I had people literally just like shouting me out on LinkedIn, like this was the best prospecting message I've ever seen, only because I sent them a picture of me with their.
When you say a whiteboard picture on LinkedIn, what do you mean by what's on the whiteboard? Like
So this one says, "Hey Robert, worth a chat," and it's their logo. Really bad at drawing, but people love the human aspect behind it. I'll even call it out, like I did horrible at your logo in the email. So it'll be a whiteboard picture. It's me, a whiteboard, their name. It'll say like, open to an intro, worth a chat, got 30 minutes, whatever it might be.
And this is like a follow-up because we I've mentioned it to you, but we turn a lot of these recordings into a written blog. So would you be able to find some of those images that we could show? Because I think that would be really, really good to be able to show some of the, even if they're not the that really, really successful one you're on about, just to give a bit of context of like the types of things you can do. And obviously we can take people's names out of the board and everything for, because they're in cyber, we don't want to be sharing their names or anything, but they'd have a heart attack. But okay, right. So LinkedIn, email, cold call, the whiteboard pictures are great. Are there any other, that's email and cold call, are there any other like nuggets or sort of success stories that you've got from on those two?
Yep. So LinkedIn, it's been very helpful when I ask people permission or ask for their opinion. It's been very successful. So what I mean by that is, hey, do you mind if I share with you some helpful articles that I might find in the marketing space, in the B2B marketing space or something like that? Most people are like, yeah, sure. That'd be great. Or I'll say something along the lines of, hey, can I get your opinion on something that I'm working on? That's over LinkedIn. Over email, I'm going more value proposition. I'm going more like, I'm not pitching you my product. At the end of the day, nobody cares about your product. They care about the value you can give them. And so I'm going more, I do a lot of videos these days, which have been really working in the cybersecurity industry for executives, is I'll take that research that I had just done. I'll create a video with a whiteboard and I'll thumbnail me holding the whiteboard, like waving at them. And then my videos are less than 60 seconds every single time. There's no reason to create a movie for these people. They're less than 60 seconds. I start off with anything personalized that I have for my Excel sheet. I then go into a hook like, hey, do you know B2B marketers generate 67% more pipeline if they use blah, blah, blah. So now they're hooked in, and then I go into like more of a value statement. And that's been really working over email. Also just short and sweet emails. I think if you any sales rep out there, if you're not already, follow Lavender. They drop a lot.
I was just about to say, yeah, I was like, definitely it sounds like you follow Lavender because of the stuff you're saying aligns perfectly with that.
Yeah, you've got to. You cannot post paragraphs anymore. You can't expect, an email that goes out to 3,000 people to perform as it would 3 years ago. It's a lot different. It's a different ball game now. But yeah, short, sweet. I usually have no more than 3 short lines in them. And then video.
What are you using to record your videos? Is it Loom, something like that?
Well, yeah, metadata, it was Loom because we had Loom. We work a bit old school at my current company, and I just use Photo Booth, and then I take that and put it into the email and make the thumbnail. It's more.
This is an idiocracy on my part. When you said Photo Booth, I was like, blimmin' hell, they've got a fancy photo booth in the office that they can use. But you mean a photo booth on a Mac, don't you?
Yeah, no, right, the entire in-person photo booth. I'll jump in it, and just the photo booth on Mac. Yeah. So, but Loom and Vidyard are by far the 2 easiest ones.
Yeah, I don't, for those who haven't heard of Loom, I'm sure everyone has, but I think you get like 20, 25 free videos, and then you can just delete old ones, and it's basically a never-ending cycle of these videos. And they're great. They're great. Definitely check it out. Our head of sales does the same. He records like these Trumpet called them micro demos. Exactly like you said. It's those 60 second sort of value prop things. So that those videos, you would send the links on messages as well as emails, just playing around with different sort of structures and strategies.
Yeah, so a lot of times, before I get into that, shout out Rory at Trumpet. It's a good guy over there. But a lot of the times with videos, what I'm doing is I will literally say like, hey, Jamie, watched your episode 41 podcast and you mentioned blah, 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 blah. Wanted to like share my thoughts about it in 60 seconds or whatever. And I'll give the exact time in 37 seconds. And then I'll have my video right under that. It's very short, easy to read. And then they click on that video, and if you're using Loom, the Loom pops up. But yeah, it's usually, I will tell them what I'm talking about in the video, but I'll leave room for a little bit of mystery. Like, hey, I found out this about you, and I, respect this opinion about you. Here's what I think about that. And then they have to go watch it. So
yeah, it's that fear of missing out. We were speaking to someone called Sophie Ellis from Lunio, and she did the same with voice notes, where she'd send a voice note, and if they didn't reply within X amount of days, I think it was like 48 hours, she'd send a message with a finger pointing up saying, like, did you not hear that bit at the end? Question mark. And then they're like, what bit at the end? I haven't listened to it. So then they'll go and listen to it.
You know, it's funny. Something that and this is great for account penetration, something that I feel like I've always been against, but I try it. Prospecting is all about experimenting, right? So what I've been doing is I've been sending a video or like a very tailored email. And then if they don't, and I'll do that in the morning, if they don't respond, the very next day I follow up on that thread. I don't even give them time to think about it, to be honest. And it's weird, but it's helped a lot. I'll say something like that, like, what did you like about the video or something like that? And they're like, oh crap, I gotta watch it. And I actually did that when I broke into an account at Metadata, speaking of account penetration, and it ended up being the largest deal closed in history at Metadata. And it was all from a Loom video. And then a day later I said, what'd you think about the video? And they then responded after that. So I love that. But I never thought about, what did you think about the end? That's clever. I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah. It basically, it would be a question with an arrow or whatever pointing up, but it's a question that was very specific about the voice note. Like, did you not want to know, how many invalid clicks you got last month, something like that, you know, in the Lunio use case, like something where you're gonna read it and be like, no, actually, I do want to know the answer to that. God damn it. So
shout out to Leonardo. Right. Shout out to Leonardo at Lunio. All these companies. Look at this. It's a small world.
Yeah. We've got Rory, Lunio, or Trumpet. We're Lavender. We're shouting out a few companies here. This is dark. This is dark social in operation here. Yeah, we should do. We should get some sponsors for the podcast. But okay, and then I guess the only other one we haven't spoken about out of those three was cold call. So do you want to just run us through a bit about your cold call strategy?
Yeah. So with me, cold call took a backseat for a very long time because of COVID. Everybody kind of stopped going to the office. Now I'm slowly starting to pick it back up. And for me, it's like I don't have any secret sauce for cold call. It's very basic. And you go to Josh Braun and all this stuff, and it's like, hey, I know I caught you off guard. Do you have 20 seconds to tell you why I'm calling, whatever. I just say, hey, it's Troy from Proofpoint. You got a minute? Like, is that it? That's the old school cold call way. You got a minute? And they're like, yeah, sure. What's going on? And then I go into my value proposition, or, hey, I saw that you're hiring for blank, which typically means blank. You want to jump on a call next week to learn how Proofpoint can help you with that. My cold call recipe is very old school, and it's because I had a lot of success cold calling before COVID, and like tons of success. I'm talking 10 to 15 meetings a week. And so I've stuck to that. However, I do like the idea of the permission-based opener where you kind of ask permission to pitch first. But I'm trying to get my point across as quick as possible.
Yeah, the permission-based, funny you bring it up, actually. We are having a chat with Jack and Zach from We Have a Meeting. They're pretty big on LinkedIn in the UK, at least. But their most successful cold call opener, they're an outbound agency. Their most successful cold call opener was, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a sales call. You can either give me 30 seconds or you can bash your head against a wall and hang up. Something like that. And then you often find someone would chuckle and say, and then they would go, okay, yeah, what's it about? And that's been their most successful, like permission-based opener. So like permission plus humor plus, sarcasm, something like that. Usually works quite well.
Yeah, I know Morgan Ingram and 30 Minutes to President Club and Josh Braun are really big on that, right? Like just admitting that it's a cold call, just being honest. I haven't tried, to be honest, like quite frank, I haven't tried it yet because I've had so much success with social selling on LinkedIn and the emails, which people are saying are, like dying. But that's what's working for me. What works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else, but hopefully it works for at least one other person, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've just got off a podcast kickoff before this with someone called Julia at Marpi, or Marpi, I don't know how you say it. And she doesn't cold call at all. She was just saying she uses email and LinkedIn, predominantly email, and she hit some like 400% quota.
Yeah, that's my recipe.
And she doesn't personalize. It's automated, and she uses email. And for her and her role in that industry, it works really, really well. So, yeah, very subjective.
She's great too.
Part 4 then, right, with multi-channel approach, LinkedIn, cold calls, and emails. we've got we sort of listed it as like workflow execution. So I guess we kind of spoken about it, but when we're talking about workflow execution, I guess it's like running it through your typical cadence or structure. So what would that sort of look like for you?
Yeah, for me, I do all of my LinkedIn work in the morning, and I've done this for years, and it's because it's been really successful for years. So, and it's like really structured. It's become habitual at this point. So from like 8 a.m. to 8:30, I'm going on there and I'm sending out new connection requests to people that might be a good fit, or that would be a good fit to my ICP. At the current company, that's changed a little bit more to posting and commenting, because I've already connected with just about everybody in my 9 accounts. But from 8 to 30, I do that. From 8:30 to 9, I typically go and I just start liking and commenting on a lot of my ICP's posts. LinkedIn Sales Nav makes that very easy. Regular LinkedIn does not. You kind of have to go back and backtrack who's connected to you and go to their profile and stuff like that. There might be tools to automate all this stuff too. I think there is like Phantom Buster and Duck Soup and stuff like that. But that's what I'll do. And then from there, I go straight into messaging. And so the way that I'll typically do it, again, might be tools to automate this, but I'm getting paid to do it anyway, so why not? The way I'll do it is I'll message somebody like 2 or 3 days after they connect with me, and it'll either be like I'm giving them some sort of value, or I'm asking them like some sort of question, or I'm calling out something that they posted on LinkedIn or anything like that I found on Google. And so I'll do that 2 to 3 days after they connect with me. And then the next week, I will follow up with that person as well. So every single week, I'm following up with these people. I'm just continuously giving like value rather than pitching product. Sometimes I'll throw in snippets of kind of like illuminating pain, right? Like kind of let them know like, hey, your hair could be on fire over here and we can help with that. But I'm never just like, hey, our product has these 3 features and they're super cool. You should buy us. But I do that every single morning. So anywhere from 8 to 10 a.m., I'm pure LinkedIn work, commenting, connecting with new people, messaging people, liking posts, all that stuff. It's every single day. For me, because I do like social selling, I post a lot on LinkedIn too. So within that 8 to 10 time, I also make a post as well. Only because when I was at Metadata, I only posted about pretty much converting more leads, which marketers loved hearing about it, or building a B2B brand as well. Those got me a lot of recognition. And because I was posting to what was familiar in my ICP, it ended up generating a lot more meetings as well. But now it's just a bunch of messages, likes, comments, and posts, and commenting on their post. So there's that. And then I always have I usually have 2, but every single day I'll have at least one 45-minute email block. And then at the end of the day, so that email, I can't do an hour. I get way too sidetracked. I cannot focus that quick. That's way too hard for me. Or for that long. But what I'll do is I'm purely just dedicated. I grab my notes on one screen, I have the email on the other screen, and I'm just typing out stuff. The more that I learn, the more that I know, things like that. And I'm making sure that it's short, sweet, it's very value filled rather than, hey, you should talk to Proofpoint because of this. And then at the end of the day, I always write down my to-do for tomorrow. Like, hey, reach out to these 4 people, follow up on these 2 opportunities, do 3 closed loss opportunities, things like that. So at the end of the day, I kind of structure what my day will look like tomorrow in my focus blocks.
Okay, so you start your day off LinkedIn, email, 45-ish minute block, and then is it cold calls in the afternoon, is it?
Yeah, so cold calls right now, because I really only have about 10 people I can cold call, executives I can cold call. Nobody's in the office at my companies. They're all remote. So the lower level people, when you have Apollo or Zoom Info, they usually don't have their mobile number. So I have about 10 executives, 10 to 15 contacts I can cold call. So it's tough. I don't do like daily cold call blocks. I'll say about once a week, I'll cold call all of them. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll wait, 2-3 more weeks and try to cold call them again. I only have 9 accounts. So if I miss my chance, I'm screwed for at least 1 year through the contract that they might sign soon. So I have to be very methodical and strategic of how I go about cold calling. One of them actually had a voicemail that said, if you're cold calling me and this is a vendor, I will never do business with you. So I immediately was like, all right, delete off my list. I'm not going to call him because I don't want to ruin my chances. So today cold calls are really light because I don't have many people to reach out to.
No, on the topic of the LinkedIn block you were talking about, or like blocking your diary out for certain periods each day. I think we did an episode of, I think the title was like how to book 4 times more demos using LinkedIn, and it was one of our SDRs here literally books 4 times more demos on LinkedIn, and he does cold calling, and he cold calls like, you know, minimum $40-50 a day, and he's still booking 4 times more through LinkedIn. But he does that exact thing. His diary every single day is a standardized structure of between these hours make or reach out and connect with people on LinkedIn, do some comments, post, between here do email, and then like you said, that block at the end of the day, which is like recap, make your notes and get set up ready for the next day. And he just follows the same structure every single day, and he swears by it.
Dude, if you're very active on LinkedIn and you're active with cold calling, you're gonna crush it as an SDR. In my position now, I just don't have the luxury of doing a lot of cold calls, but any time where I've been heavy on cold calls, it's the fastest way to book a meeting. And then 2, it's always good, especially if you're kind of tracking what numbers go through and what numbers are actually those people based on their voicemails and stuff, because then you can really focus the next call block on, hey, only these people. But yeah, I mean, if you're cold calling and doing LinkedIn every single day, I personally believe in LinkedIn, but every single day you're going to hit your number as an SDR no matter where you're at.
And the last thing we've got on the list is as like the 5-part sort of process or structure is the follow through. So my understanding is this is more once you've got that initial response, the okay, let's have a chat, or I don't know, just great, thanks for reaching out. How do you follow through? How are you closing? Like when we say close, I think what we're actually meaning is like getting them from the point of that penetration to book demo, aren't we? So how do you close that book demo?
Yeah, so a lot of times I want to know if there's anybody else that's going to be joining the call, 1. And 2, I also, it really depends. You can't do this for every single company because a lot of people don't have enough time to do it. But a lot of times I'll actually include, like, once they say yes to a meeting, before that meeting's ever even done, I'll kind of send like a pre-call. Like, hey, this is what I plan to go over on the call. I'll add like a use case into it. One tool that makes that really easy is Page, if we're going to be shouting out tools this entire time. PAAGE, great tool. But I always like, if it's a worthy enough, I'm talking outside of Proofpoint because these are only 9 accounts, but if I was at metadata, if it was a worthy enough, like my top 50, top 40 account, I'm going to send them pretty much a pre-call agenda, like almost, hey, this is what we're going to cover. This is what I assume based on what I found. Here are some use cases you might find helpful. When I did that, people, I don't know if it's like, oh, he took the time to do this research and be helpful or anything like that. I'm not sure if they took it as a psychological thing, but they showed up more often than not. But then I'm also emailing them the day before too. I don't really do emails the day of, hey, our meeting's coming up today. But I'll be like, hey, I see that our call's tomorrow at 3 p.m. Really excited to meet you and your team or whoever's on the call. Is there anything that I can answer before then? Something like that. That's how I usually go about the close. But I do always want to know if there's anybody else we can bring on, because if not, what's going to happen? You jump on that first call. If it goes well, then you have to bring that person on for a second call, and it just prolongs the deal.
Yeah. And then you mentioned there about the reminder the day before or whatever. And I think if we're shouting out tools, we recently onboarded with Chili Piper, and that's been game changing for our show up, right?
Their automated reminders are just, they're incredible. Chili Piper is really good.
I was just getting a call on Teams, so my headphones cut out there, but we're all good. Yeah, so like Chili Piper, our show up rate is honestly, like, I think it's something like 90%, 95% show up rate. Yeah. And that there was like the 2 weeks that we did that onboarding, like literally after we did that onboarding, it just went up dramatically. And I think with Chili Piper, we do 2 days before if they haven't accepted, 1 day before, and then 1 minute before. So what you would have got it for this podcast, which is, hey Troy, I'm ready for you at the link below. And that's like that last little reminder, because we had the amount of people now that they join the demo and they're already waiting for them in the lobby, and they're like, blimmin' hell, the person's here before me, which is unheard of.
Yeah, dude, well, first and foremost, I wasn't going to join this meeting except for that Chili Piper link it reminded me, just kidding. But one, Chili Piper is incredible at those reminders. And a lot of times in this remote world, it's like you'll get off of a meeting and then you'll go walk the dog or go make lunch and you'll forget that you have another meeting. So that 1 minute right before a reminder, especially if people are deep into their admin work, is incredible. They're like, oh crap, I got a call that I gotta get on in 1 minute. So love hearing that.
Yeah, but by all means, I know we're giving Chili Piper a great recommendation here, but you, like you said, you can do those manually. It's not difficult to send a standardized email 5 minutes before or a day before. That it can be done manually, and I'm sure there's other Calendly, there's other tools out there, but Chili Piper's great. If you tell them I sent you, and we're gonna stack up these kickbacks. Are there any other? Are there any other things to remember for this like just making sure they book in and getting them on the call?
Yeah. And right before that, also, if you have Google, you can schedule an email. So you can literally schedule the email like 5 minutes before that meeting. But yeah, I would say when it comes to account penetration, there's a couple of mindsets that I have. One is I will book the meeting. Like literally, it sounds so stupid and cliche, but my mindset is I'm going to book the meeting. And the reason for that is because I know enough about the people in the company that there's no reason that they wouldn't book a meeting with me. Two, nobody cares about your product. And I die on this hill. Nobody cares. So Selligence, I'm sure you have 4 or 5 other very similar or somewhat similar competitors, but you also have thousands of tools that you're competing for with budget. So it's like you have a competitor and hundreds or thousands of them when you're selling to the persona you are. Nobody cares about what your features do versus what the other company's features do. However, it's when I'm reaching out, I always tell myself, and I try to put myself in their shoes. It's like, would I respond? Like, am I going to get value from this email rather than, am I going to get a feature pitch? Am I going to get value from this email? So the way I do it is I never really talk about my product. I talk about their business. I talk about where they plan to go based on my prior research. And then I talk about how we could possibly help them get there. But I leave it open for I leave the product open up to their imagination. I'm like, this is how we do it.
I know we've done a lot of drop-in of tools and drop-in of episodes in this, but we on your point there of, not just feature dumping or not just talking about your product, focusing on the problem statement, whatever you want to call it. We had an episode with a guy called Nick Butler at Jiminy, and he spoke about a strategy which he called goal and trigger selling. But it was essentially, the goal is you find out the strategic objective of that company over the next 12 months. And he didn't mean increase revenue. That's not an objective. That's every business's goal on this planet, increase revenue. So the strategic objective was, to help increase revenue, we're going to focus on improving our retention, our retention by 15%. And he would be like, great, that's my hook. That's how I'm going to say we can help you. I can help you increase your customer retention by 15%. And then eventually they're going to go, right, how? Or, then you go into this is how it does it. And that works really, really well. So whether you call it like mapping the problem statement or goal and trigger selling or whatever, like,
I feel like I know we're running up on time, but to piggyback off that real quick, same thing with your basic sales and forecasting. It'll be like, why would they buy our product? Oh, because they need more. It happened in metadata a lot, right? Oh, because they need more revenue. That's not every company needs more revenue. Like, that's not a thing. Like, what is it? Is it because they're missing the revenue targets by 40% and that person's going to get fired if she doesn't have a good quarter or whatever it might be, or he doesn't have a good quarter? So I love that. I love the example you gave with Jiminy. There's always something deeper than what we actually think. That goes with sales and prospecting, even marketing too. But
don't be afraid to be direct. If they're not giving you that strategic goal or objective, then you got 2 options. It's keep digging, be more direct, or you say, look, at this moment in time, I'm not going to sit here and say that I can, my product's going to help you generally increase revenue. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm a sales rep and I want to understand what your strategic goals are so that we can have the most success, best working relationship, whatever. And I think you've got to be confident that as part of that discovery, as part of that demo process or whatever, that you do get all the information you need to be able to execute your job in as most effective way possible. But in terms of that executing your job in the most effective way possible, the question I got on my next down on the list is like, what was your it might be that metadata one actually you spoke about, but what's your biggest success story in terms of account penetration? Like, what was the most difficult, the biggest, the, I don't know, biggest account that you penetrated, and deal wise, like, is there one success story that sits at the top of your head?
Yeah, there is that one. I'll quickly touch on two, but the metadata one ended up being like a 200 plus K deal for just 1 year. And it was all from actually doing a Loom video, the next day follow up. And what I did was I sent a video of me actually using the product as if, so this was actually sort of a product pitch, but of me using the product as if I were sitting in the person's shoes that I was reaching out to. So I was going through the metadata demo on this quick 2 minute, or it was less than 2 minutes, Loom. He was a very low level, like the lowest you could possibly go at the time. He's gotten a few promotions since, but it went from there. And then that actually bubbled up to his manager, to the director, to the VP. Then we built the champion with the VP, and it ended up closing really well because of that champion that we built. But that was one that was really exciting because I went from like a bottoms up approach rather than top down. And the other success is I've been at Proofpoint for 5 months. I have 9 accounts. And what's really interesting is these accounts that I have, even during when I was interviewing, they were telling me, hey, you're going to have a tough time. These are all the accounts that people cannot break into. They haven't been able to for years. And every person throughout the interview process was like, you know what you're getting into, right? Like, this is going to be hard on the mental because you're not going to be able to do it. But I've been able to break into 5 out of 9. And so, and opportunities have came from each one. And so that makes me feel, especially when I'm texting my manager, like, hey, just got a meeting with this company. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing the right things. I'm standing out a little bit more than the next person. But yeah, so I think those two.
And 5 out of 9 in 5 months is a good penetration rate, right? So, I think that's nothing, like you said, that's something to be proud of there. But look, like you said, we're coming up to time, and I think we've both got a hard stop. The classic world of sales, it's demo to demo to demo. So appreciate you fitting in the podcast and then sharing all of the tips and tricks that you have. I've got one last question for you, which is podcast and nominate, essentially. So for those that have listened before, you'll know what this is, but it's who do we need to get on the podcast next, and why, if you want to do a why. Usually the why is just, they're super active and they'd be great. So like who and why.
Yeah, is the idea to have somebody in sales?
Yes, please. Yeah, preferably. I mean, as much as I'd love to get someone in marketing on, it's strictly sales.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'd give Kevin Young. I'd reach out to Kevin Young, and I could even tell him, he was my manager at Metadata. But something you mentioned on this podcast was you just got to ask those blunt and hard questions. I've never seen anybody do it better. And that's something, honestly, I think 98% of reps struggle with, even myself at many times, is like, why aren't you signing this today? Like, why don't you just ask that? What's preventing you from signing this contract this week? Like, those questions, he was just blunt, right to the point. He might be able to give a lot of value on the blunt questions and stuff like that. And I could do an introduction if need be.
Yeah, perfect. I've written his name down, but an introduction would be great. And I think just to recap there, we've gone through quite a few different steps and strategies, and even name drop tools or recommended tools and other episodes that you can go and check out to help build a bigger picture of this. But hopefully that's given a good rundown of account penetration and like how you can break into those accounts more easily in a very, very structured and coherent way, whether that be 400 accounts you've got or 9, as you've said. So like I said, appreciate you jumping on, and hopefully it's not been too horrific for you.
No, not as bad as I thought. Just kidding. Thanks for having me, Jamie. It was a blast.
Fantastic. Right. Well, for those that are listening, we hope to have you back in the next episode. Please go and hit the follow button, hit the 5-star review. It helps us out.